I wasn't going to do this review, but a lot of people wanted me to. There are going to be spoilers in it, so if you don't want spoilers, turn this off now. I don't usually talk about films on this channel, but I am more qualified than most on YouTube to provide narrative or textual breakdowns. I haven't watched any other reviews, so if anyone else has said any of these things before, the fact I'm saying it too makes the point more likely to be an objective fact based on observation. Before starting, it's worth establishing a few things, because it seems that's what everyone does these days. I'm a long-time Star Wars fan who watched the original trilogy as a kid. Reflecting on it, I wouldn't say I became a huge fan until the release of the 1997 special edition on VHS when I was around 15 years of age. The timing was pretty good because that meant I was 17 for the release of The Phantom Menace and old enough to really get stuck into the fan sites and the internet forums. And I remember many a fond hour speculating on what would be in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith before they came out. There was genuine excitement for things like Christopher Lee being in Star Wars, or the prospect of Yoda or the Emperor fighting. This made it generally a good time to be a Star Wars fan. And because of this, I have always defended the prequels. In any case, despite all that, I really enjoyed The Force Awakens. I went to see the film with some geeky friends of mine, and the excitement in the air was palpable. We all felt, well, Star Wars is back. However, I was also in the boat of really hating The Last Jedi. In fact, I hated it to the extent that I said I would not even go and watch Rise of Skywalker. That was until Disney made the single move that could have persuaded me back to the cinema, which is the return of my favourite character in the saga, Emperor Palpatine. So with all of that established, let's get on with it, shall we? I've condensed my review down to 10 easily digestible points. So number one is, the narrative arc of the trilogy is very messy. I've tried to think about each character and their story across the three films, as you can see here. Rey's journey is a classic quest of self-discovery. In The Force Awakens, she metaphorically asks, "Who am I?" In The Last Jedi, the answer appears to be, "You're no one." And then in Rise of Skywalker, that answer is filled in with, "Actually, you're Emperor Palpatine's granddaughter." But then, in the end, she chooses to self-identify as a Skywalker, and so again, it doesn't seem to matter now she's a Skywalker. This is hopelessly confused storytelling, and frankly, it's not worth trying even to make it all work. And then there's Kylo Ren's journey, which is probably the only really coherent and well-done arc in the whole trilogy. He also has a journey of self-discovery. Is he Kylo Ren, the dark side user and would-be supreme leader of the galaxy, or is he Ben Solo, the son of Han and Leia, and therefore all-round great guy? Well, in Force Awakens, he lurches to the dark side, killing Han Solo. In Last Jedi, he lurches to the light side, killing Snoke, his old mentor. And then in Rise of Skywalker, he fulfills his destiny by embracing his heritage and becoming Ben Solo, giving his life for Rey at the end, much like Vader gave his life for Luke in Return of the Jedi. Yes, good, this all works. It's just about the only thing that works in the trilogy, but it does. But now let's get to the rest of the main cast. What was Finn's journey? You know, the former stormtrooper in Force Awakens. What was his setup in Force Awakens? I'd say, well, maybe he had a few trust issues. But then in The Last Jedi, he spends the entire running time of the film pretty much in an unforgivably bad side quest with Rose, during which he learns absolutely nothing. And then in this film, what does he learn? There are a few weird scenes where he appears to be Force sensitive. He has a secret he wants to tell Rey, but unless I somehow missed it, he never does tell her, or therefore us, what this secret is. So what's his arc? Is it that he learns to trust others? It seems so weak, given that he's been practically 100% on board with the Resistance since the first half of Force Awakens. Finn was a great missed opportunity to do something interesting. He could have been a great character, but he was given nothing interesting to do in 3 films. And then there is Poe and the question of his journey. He starts off as an ace pilot for the Resistance. In The Last Jedi, bafflingly, he learns such lessons as always trust those in authority, especially if they're women like this one, ask no questions, and also risk is bad. And then in this film he learns to have hope, and that if he does have hope he can be a good leader. I mean, it's absolutely hopeless. Again, Poe is not a bad character at all, but the trilogy didn't allow him to grow. And then there is the question of Snoke, the mystery box wrapped in an enigma who turned out to be, oh, it was just Palpatine all along. Honestly, the Snoke part of this reminded me of the plot of Mega Man 4, when we find out that it was just Dr. Wily up to his old tricks all along, and not Dr. Cossack. Actually, the writing in Mega Man 4 is probably better than the writing in this movie. This brings me on to the second main point I want to make, which is that it felt unnatural for everyone to be talking about Palpatine. And this is because the sequel trilogy has failed to establish proper links, and the proper links it needed to, with the old Empire. It is a general failure of world building, mythos and lore. Did everyone in the old Empire call the Emperor Palpatine? I don't recall the name Palpatine being used in the entire original trilogy. In fact, the last time Palpatine is name-checked in the actual script of a Star Wars film, chronologically speaking, is here by Mace Windu on page 29 of the Episode 3 script. Which brings me to my third point. The film is much too reliant on episodes 1 to 6 to establish Palpatine as the big bad here. I know we've all seen those films, but somehow seeing him plonked back in here, he seemed disconnected from everything else we've seen in the sequel trilogy. There wasn't enough world building and scene setting for us to know how typical people in the galaxy perceived Palpatine, especially in this time after the Empire has fallen. Was he very visible in the old Empire? The original trilogy seemed to suggest that he's a shadowy figure and that Darth Vader is more visible and more of a household name. We just aren't given any hints whatsoever here, and I think Disney's effort to distance the sequels from the prequel trilogy makes this even more jarring, since the very word Palpatine itself, as I've established, is quite a prequel thing in general. So we're relying on knowledge from films that are otherwise scarcely referenced at all. Tonally, it's all very strange, and I don't think it worked. My next point, and this might seem like an odd criticism, but the film is weirdly averse to anything sexual. All of the key relationships are platonic, and this is symbolized by the group hug at the end, which reminded me a little bit of watching Dawson's Creek in space. The sexual chemistry between Han Solo and Leia was a big part of the original trilogy, and as awful as it was, what passed for the love story between Anakin and Padme was a big part of the prequel films. Here, Rey is pretty much asexual. Finn seems stuck in an endless kind of friend zone, treated almost like a gay best friend. At a certain point I was actually wondering if Poe and Finn were going to come out and be gay. That's how little action Finn has seen in the romantic stakes. Meanwhile, poor Poe can't even get a kiss from his spice pirate assassin girlfriend after saving the galaxy. I mean, if you can't get a kiss in that moment, when can you get a kiss? It's so odd that these films are scared of romantic relationships as much as they are. However, one thing that Rise of Skywalker did seem to capture from the prequels was some absolutely terrible dialogue, which is my fifth point. Dialogue is almost entirely a function of plot in this film. So we had scenes like this. A nameless NPC tells the crew they need to go to a place and get a thing to do a thing, and then they make haste and go and do it, while Finn sets Poe up to make a joke and someone else, probably Lando, says, "I have a bad feeling about this." It's so unbelievably perfunctory. I think it might easily be the worst dialogue in a Star Wars film. And remember, this is including those clunky scenes between Anakin and Padme in the field. And this is not helped by my sixth point, which is that the plot of the film is like a set of fetch and carry quests in your typical computer RPG game. The basic plot is nested like so. They need to find Palpatine, but he's on a hidden planet, and the only way to find it is to find the Sith Wayfarer. Yes, seriously, Sith Wayfarer. But the only way to find it is to find a magic sword which has some runes on it, but then C-3PO won't translate Sith for some reason unless his memory is wiped. I mean, I am sure I have played actual computer games with better plots than this. Mega Man 4, for example. And this is not helped by the fact that the pacing of the film is much too frantic. This was some real MTV attention deficit editing from J.J. Abrams, but the film felt rushed as a result. Again, none of the previous films are especially fast-paced, but this felt like it was a million miles an hour. The first 10 minutes cram in a lot. The Emperor's back. We must find him. Oh, and by the way, everything you've ever known is a lie. You can scarcely get any time to process what you're being shown. And because of this, and along with all the other problems I've mentioned, key revelations do not land and come across like fan fiction of the worst variety. Key moments of emotion, for example, let us say the death of Princess Leia, let us say the return of Lando, let us say the revelation that Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter, let us say the fake death of Chewbacca, let us say the mind games between Rey and Kylo Ren, and so on and so forth. They just do not land. And taking all of these things together, even though the stakes seem to be raised to an impossibly high level, nothing feels like it matters. Although there are many epic fights in the film, in all honesty, something as incidental from the prequel films like, say, Count Dooku versus Yoda felt more important than almost anything in The Rise of Skywalker. And all that Dooku scene really does is establish that Anakin's hand gets cut off. So there we have it. Disney have concluded their massively disappointing sequel trilogy, which wasted every opportunity, failed to deliver on the promise of The Force Awakens. They bought the biggest franchise in movie history with an amazingly deep lore and basically just frittered it away. It's such a shame, but there we are. I guess it's time to put childish things away, gents. We aren't 12 anymore. Now get out.